The arena was alive with noise. Thousands of alien voices echoed to the massive circular stadium under the dark red sky of Varkos Prime. Giant lights moved across the crowd, while strange creatures from every corner of the galaxy screamed for excitement. Some aliens had metal skin. Some had glowing blue eyes. Some had claws sharp enough to cut steel. But all of them had come for one reason. They wanted to watch someone die. At the center of the arena stood a single human, Ethan Cole. His hands were chained behind his back. His brown jacket was ripped and covered with dirt. A small cut above his eye slowly dripped blood down his face. Yet he did not look afraid. That alone confused the crowd. Humans were not respected in most parts of the galaxy. Other species called them weak, emotional, and easy to break. Many powerful races believed humanity only survived because nobody considered them important enough to destroy. Tonight was supposed to prove that humans did not belong among stronger races. A loud horn suddenly shook the arena. The crowd exploded with cheers. Huge holograms appeared in the air above the battlefield, showing clips from previous games. Warriors being torn apart, creatures burned alive, contestants begging for mercy before death. This was a game of fate, the most dangerous entertainment in the galaxy, and nobody survived it for long. A giant platform slowly rose above the crowd. Standing on it was the ruler of the games himself, Lord Koresh. The giant alien stood nearly 9 feet tall. Thick gray scales covered his body beneath heavy golden armor. His glowing yellow eyes looked down at Ethan like a hunter staring at trapped prey. The crowd immediately became silent. Koresh raised one clawed hand. "People of Varkos Prime," he shouted proudly, "tonight you will witness another lesson." The audience roared. Koresh pointed directly at Ethan. "The lesson that weakness cannot survive." More cheers followed. Ethan slowly looked around the arena. Massive black walls surrounded him from every side. Heavy steel gates stood closed behind him. Strange glowing symbols covered the arena floor beneath his boots. Something about the place felt ancient, like thousands had already died here. Koresh smiled coldly. This human was captured near the outer trade systems. A simple cargo pilot from Earth. The crowd laughed loudly. "A pilot!" someone shouted. "They sent a delivery man?" Another voice mocked. Koresh nodded with fake disappointment. This is the best humanity could offer. More laughter filled the arena, but Ethan finally spoke. His voice was calm. "If your people are so brave," he asked quietly, "why does an entire stadium need one prisoner for entertainment?" The laughter stopped instantly. The silence became heavy. Several aliens turned toward each other in surprise. Nobody expected the human to speak back, especially not like that. Koresh narrowed his eyes. "You speak boldly for prey." Ethan shrugged slightly. "And you hide behind guards for someone who talks about strength." A low wave of whispers moved through the audience. Koresh's jaw tightened. The ruler hated public embarrassment. Still, he forced himself to smile. "You will learn respect soon enough, human." Without warning, the giant steel gates behind Ethan opened slowly. A deep growling sound echoed from the darkness beyond. The ground trembled. Heavy footsteps approached. Boom, boom, boom. The audience began screaming with excitement. A gigantic creature slowly walked into the light. The monster was horrifying. Its body looked like a mix between a wolf and a reptile. Black armored skin covered its massive muscles. For glowing red eyes stared at Ethan with pure rage. Long chains dragged behind its body, while saliva dripped from rows of sharp teeth. "The blood fong!" The crowd screamed together. Ethan carefully watched the creature. It was at least 15 feet tall. Its claws could tear a man apart in seconds. Koresh spread his arms proudly. "Your first challenge." The chains around Ethan's wrists unlocked and dropped onto the ground. The blood fong released a roar so powerful that the walls vibrated. The crowd started chanting loudly. "Blood, blood, blood." But Ethan remained still. That confused the beast. Normally contestants ran in fear. This human did not. The blood fong slowly circled him. Ethan studied every movement carefully. Then he noticed something strange. The creature was injured. Its left leg dragged slightly across the ground, and around its neck was a thick metal collar, cutting deep into its skin. The monster was not wild. It was suffering. Koresh raised one hand high into the air. Begin! The blood fong suddenly charged forward like an explosion. The arena floor cracked beneath its weight. The audience screamed wildly. At the last second, Ethan jumped aside. The creature smashed into the ground where he had stood only moments earlier. Dust filled the air. But Ethan did not attack. Instead, he grabbed one of the broken chains lying nearby. The blood fong turned around angrily and charged again. This time, Ethan ran directly toward it. Gasps spread across the arena. The human was insane. Just before the creature reached him, Ethan slid beneath its claws and wrapped the chain around the monster's injured leg. The blood fong stumbled hard. Before it could recover, Ethan grabbed the metal collar around its neck and pulled with all his strength. The lock snapped open. The collar crashed onto the ground. For 1 second, everything became silent. The blood fong froze. Its breathing slowly calmed. The rage inside its glowing eyes began fading. Ethan carefully stepped closer. The giant creature stared down at him. Then Ethan gently placed one hand against its face. The crowd watched in shock. The blood fong lowered its head slowly like a loyal animal. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. No contestant had ever survived longer than a few minutes against the beast. But this human had not fought it. He had freed it. Koresh slammed his fist against the railing. "Kill him," he roared. But the blood fong did not move. Ethan finally looked up toward the ruler. "You tortured a wounded creature for sport," he said coldly. Koresh's eyes burned with anger. "This is tradition." "No," Ethan replied calmly. "This is cruelty pretending to be strength." The arena became silent again. Even the crowd looked uncertain now, because deep inside, many of them knew the human was right. Koresh realized it too, and that made him dangerous. The ruler slowly leaned forward. "You believe this game should be about honor?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Koresh smiled darkly. "Then let us test your honor." Suddenly, the glowing symbols beneath Ethan's feet turned bright red. The arena floor began shaking violently. The blood fong stepped backward nervously. A giant circular opening slowly appeared beneath Ethan. Cold air rushed upward from the darkness below. The crowd gasped. Nobody expected this. Koresh's cruel smile widened. "Welcome," he said softly, "to the real game." And before Ethan could move, the floor disappeared beneath him. Ethan fell into darkness. Cold air rushed past his face as the arena disappeared above him. The red lights of Varkos Prime became smaller and smaller until only blackness remained. Then, crash! He hit the ground hard. Pain shot through his back and shoulders. Dust filled the air around him while loose stones rolled across the floor. For several seconds, Ethan could not breathe properly. Far above, the circular opening slowly closed. The last thing he heard before complete darkness swallowed him was the crowd cheering. Then silence remained. A deep, heavy silence. Ethan slowly pushed himself up from the cold stone floor. His entire body hurt, but nothing seemed broken. That was lucky. Very lucky. He looked around carefully. The underground chamber was enormous. Ancient black walls stretched into darkness on every side. Strange blue symbols glowed faintly across the stone, like veins of light. The place felt old. Older than the arena above. Older than the empire itself. Ethan wiped blood from his lip and took a slow breath. "This doesn't look like part of the show," he muttered quietly. Suddenly, a metallic voice echoed through the chamber. "Round 2 begins." The voice came from hidden speakers somewhere in the darkness. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "So there are rounds," he whispered. Another voice followed immediately. "Only one may leave." A loud grinding sound echoed ahead. Massive stone doors slowly opened deep within the shadows, and something stepped out. At first, Ethan thought it was a machine. Then he saw the eyes. A giant armored creature walked into the glowing blue light. It stood almost 8 feet tall, with dark silver armor covering its body. One arm had been replaced with a massive mechanical blade stained with old blood. Its face looked partly alien, partly robotic, and completely dead inside. Chains hung from its waist. Human skulls were attached to its armor. The creature stopped moving about 30 feet away. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Ethan. Then it spoke in a cold mechanical voice. Human identified. Ethan slowly stepped backward. Great, he muttered. Another friendly face. The creature lifted its giant blade arm. Objective, kill opponent. Then it charged. Fast. Far faster than something that large should move. Ethan barely rolled aside before the blade smashed into the stone floor, sending sparks flying everywhere. The impact cracked the ground. Ethan's heart pounded. One direct hit would kill him instantly. The armored creature attacked again without hesitation. Swing. Crash. Swing. Crash. Each strike destroyed parts of the ancient floor, while Ethan dodged desperately through the chamber. The crowd above could probably see everything. To them, this was entertainment. To Ethan, this was survival. The creature suddenly kicked him hard across the room. Ethan slammed into a wall painfully and collapsed onto one knee. His vision blurred. The armored warrior slowly approached. Heavy footsteps echoed through the darkness. "You are weak," it said emotionlessly. Ethan coughed blood onto the floor. "Yeah." He breathed heavily. "I hear that a lot." The creature raised its blade for the killing strike. But then, a strange sound echoed through the chamber. A whisper, soft, almost impossible to hear. The armored warrior froze instantly. Its glowing eyes shifted toward the darkness behind Ethan. The whisper came again, this time louder. Ethan slowly turned around. At the far end of the chamber stood a tall figure covered in dark robes. Nobody had been there moments ago. The mysterious figure remained perfectly still beneath the glowing blue symbols. The armored warrior suddenly stepped backward, afraid. That surprised Ethan more than anything. The massive killer machine was scared. The robe figure raised one pale hand slowly, and the armored creature immediately lowered its weapon, like a servant obeying its master. Ethan stared in confusion. "Who are you?" he asked carefully. The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, it looked directly at Ethan. Its eyes glowed faint silver beneath the hood. "You freed the Blood Fawn," the stranger finally said. The voice sounded calm. "Ancient, neither male nor female." Ethan slowly stood up. "You saw that. We see everything below the arena." Ethan frowned. "We." The stranger ignored the question. "Most who fall here die within minutes." The figure continued. "You are different." The armored warrior remained motionless beside the stranger now, like a guard dog. Ethan carefully glanced around the chamber again. "Where exactly is here?" The silver eyes studied him quietly. "This place existed long, before Koresh built his games above it." The glowing blue symbols on the walls suddenly became brighter. For a brief moment, Ethan saw giant carvings hidden in the stone. Battles, empires, entire planets burning. Then the light faded again. The stranger stepped forward slowly. This was once a sacred place. Ethan listened carefully. A place where warriors proved not strength. The figure paused. "But honor..." Those words caught Ethan's attention immediately. "Honor," he repeated. The stranger nodded slightly. "Long ago, the galaxy respected courage. Protecting the weak mattered. Mercy mattered." The silver eyes darkened. But empires changed. Fear became power. Cruelty became entertainment. Ethan immediately thought of Koresh and the arena above. The stranger continued. "The game of fate was stolen and corrupted." Silence filled the chamber again. Then Ethan asked a question burning in his mind. "Why are you telling me this?" The robed figure slowly pointed toward the darkness ahead. A massive stone doorway stood there, almost invisible against the walls. Ancient symbols glowed around its edges. "Because the real trial begins now." A deep rumbling sound suddenly shook the chamber. The armored warrior immediately turned toward the doorway. Something was moving behind it. Something enormous. Ethan felt the ground vibrating beneath his boots. Then came the roar. Not animal, not machine. Something worse. The stranger stepped backward into the shadows. "If you survive what comes next," the figure said quietly, "the galaxy itself may change." Ethan's eyes narrowed. What's behind that door? The stranger's silver eyes glowed one final time. The first champion. Then the giant stone doorway slowly began to open. Hot air rushed into the chamber. Massive chains rattled in the darkness beyond. and two burning golden eyes appeared inside the blackness, watching him. The giant stone door opened slowly. Dust fell from the ceiling as ancient chains rattled deep inside the darkness. Hot air rushed through the chamber like breath from a sleeping monster. Ethan stood completely still. Those glowing golden eyes inside the darkness never blinked. They watched him carefully, patiently. The armored warrior beside the robed stranger suddenly stepped backward again. Even that deadly machine looked nervous now. That was a bad sign. A very bad sign. The mysterious stranger disappeared deeper into the shadows without another word. Ethan looked toward the doorway again. The heavy chains inside began moving louder. Clang, clang, clang. Then a gigantic figure slowly stepped into the blue light. The creature was enormous, at least 12 feet tall. Its body was covered in old black armor, filled with cracks and battle scars. Thick chains wrapped around both arms and dragged behind it across the stone floor. But it was not a monster. Not exactly. It looked human, or something close to human. Its face was partly hidden beneath an ancient iron helmet, but Ethan could still see tired eyes glowing gold beneath the darkness. The giant warrior stopped at the center of the chamber. The floor trembled beneath its weight. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the metallic voice from above returned. Trial 3. The chamber echoed with the sound. Defeat the champion, or die. Far above, the crowd in the arena screamed with excitement again. They were still watching. Ethan slowly clenched his fists. The giant warrior stared at him silently. Then, to Ethan's surprise, it spoke. You are the human. Its voice sounded deep and rough like stone grinding together. Ethan blinked. You can talk. A few seconds of silence passed. Then the giant answered. I was not always a prisoner. That immediately caught Ethan's attention. The warrior slowly removed the old iron helmet from its head. The face underneath looked scarred and exhausted. Gray marks covered the giant's skin, and one eye was damaged from some ancient battle. But the sadness in those glowing golden eyes felt worse than the scars. Ethan carefully studied him. You were forced into this too? The warrior looked away briefly. A long time ago. The chains around his arms moved softly as he took another step forward. I once fought for honor. The words echoed through the chamber. But the arena changes everyone. Ethan remembered what the stranger had said earlier. The game of fate was one sacred, not entertainment, not slaughter. A real test of courage. The warrior looked up slowly toward the hidden cameras above. They call me champion now, he said coldly, because I survived longer than the others. Ethan frowned. How long have you been down here? The giant warrior remained silent for several seconds. Then he answered quietly. I stopped counting after the first 100 years. Ethan's stomach tightened. 100 years. How many fighters had this place destroyed? How many people had died for the amusement of the crowd above? The metallic voice suddenly echoed again. Begin the trial. Immediately, red lights appeared across the walls. The audience screamed louder. They wanted violence. The giant warrior slowly lifted a massive chain-covered weapon from his back. The blade looked ancient but powerful enough to split stone apart. Still, he hesitated. Ethan noticed it instantly. The champion did not truly want to fight. Neither did Ethan. But they had no choice. The hidden speakers began counting down. 10. The giant warrior tightened his grip. 9. Ethan slowly stepped sideways. 8. The red lights flashed brighter. 7. The champion lowered his head slightly. 6. Then he suddenly whispered something very softly. Listen carefully, human. Ethan narrowed his eyes. 5. The arena feeds on fear. 4. The more the crowd enjoys the violence. 3. The stronger this place becomes. Ethan's heartbeat slowed. What did that mean? 2. The champion looked directly into Ethan's eyes. There is only one way to break the game. 1. The chamber fell silent. Then giant metal barriers slammed shut around the room. Boom! The trial had started. For a moment, neither fighter moved. The crowd above began shouting angrily. They wanted blood immediately. The champion suddenly charged forward. His giant weapon swung through the air with terrifying force. Ethan barely dodged before the blade smashed into the floor hard enough to crack the entire chamber. Dust exploded everywhere. The second attack came instantly. Ethan jumped backward again. The champion was unbelievably fast for his size. Swing after swing crashed around Ethan, while stones shattered across the battlefield. But something felt strange. The giant warrior was missing on purpose. Barely. Ethan realized it after the fourth strike. The champion was pretending to fight, trying to protect him without making it obvious to the crowd. The audience above screamed louder with frustration. Kill him. Rip the human apart. Finish the trial. The red lights across the walls began glowing brighter. The chamber itself almost seemed alive now, like it was feeding on the audience's rage. Then Ethan noticed something terrible. Dark smoke-like shadows were slowly rising from the cracks in the floor. They twisted unnaturally around the chamber walls. Watching, growing, the champion saw them too. His face darkened immediately. "There is not much time," he warned. "What are those things?" Ethan asked while dodging another fake attack. The true masters of the arena. Suddenly one of the shadow creatures lunged from the darkness. Ethan barely rolled aside before black claws slashed across the stone beside him. The creature looked horrifying. Its body was made entirely from smoke and darkness, but glowing red eyes burned inside its face. More shadows began crawling from the floor. Dozens of them. The crowd above became even louder now. They loved this. The champion roared angrily and smashed one shadow creature apart with his giant weapon. But the darkness simply reformed seconds later. "They cannot die while the arena feeds," the warrior shouted. Ethan's mind raced quickly. Fear made the creature stronger. Violence made the arena stronger. That was the secret. The entire system survived because the audience enjoyed suffering. Then Ethan remembered the blood fawn. Mercy had changed everything. Not violence. Mercy. Honor. The champion suddenly grabbed Ethan and threw him backward just as three shadow creatures attacked together. "Find the center," the warrior roared. "What center?" "The heart of the arena." Another wave of shadows rushed toward them. The giant warrior fought fiercely now, holding them back while Ethan searched the chamber desperately. Then he saw it. At the far side of the room, hidden beneath the glowing blue symbols, stood a strange, ancient pillar. Light pulsed inside it slowly, like a heartbeat. The shadows immediately turned toward Ethan, and every single creature screamed at once. The shadows screamed together. The sound filled the entire chamber like thousands of dying voices trapped inside the walls. Ethan felt cold fear crawl through his body as every dark creature turned toward him at once. Their glowing red eyes locked onto the ancient pillar across the room. The champion shouted loudly, "Run!" Ethan did not waste a second. He sprinted toward the glowing pillar, while the shadow creatures rushed after him like a black storm. Their clawed hands scraped across the stone floor, moving faster than any living creature should. Behind him, the giant champion swung his massive weapon with both hands. Boom! The blade smashed into ground, sending broken stone flying everywhere. Several shadows exploded apart into smoke. But seconds later, they reformed again. The arena kept feeding them power. Far above, the crowd screamed wildly with excitement. The louder they cheered, the stronger the shadows became. Ethan finally understood the terrible truth. The game of fate was never just entertainment. It was alive, and the audience was feeding it. A shadow creature suddenly jumped from the wall beside him. Ethan ducked barely in time as black claws sliced through the air above his head. He grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground and struck the creature hard across its face. The metal passed straight through it. The shadow only laughed. A horrible whispering sound echoed from inside its body. "You fear?" Ethan stepped backward carefully. The creature slowly moved closer. "We taste fear." More shadows surrounded him from every side now. Their bodies twisted unnaturally like living smoke. At the center of the chamber, the champion fought desperately, but even his giant strength was failing. Shadows climbed across his armor, pulling him down slowly. "Joe!" he roared again. Ethan turned and ran faster. The glowing pillar stood ahead, now beneath ancient blue symbols covering the wall. Up close, the structure looked even older than the arena itself. Strange writing glowed across its surface. Ethan reached the pillar and placed one hand against it. Instantly, a wave of energy exploded through his mind. Images flashed before his eyes. Ancient warriors standing proudly inside the same chamber. Crowds cheering not for death, but for courage. Two fighters helping each other stand after battle. Enemies showing mercy instead of hatred. The arena long ago had been sacred, a place where honor mattered more than victory. Then the vision changed. Dark ships arrived from the stars. Empires hungry for power. The sacred arena became corrupted. The trials became executions. Fear replaced honor. And something terrible awakened beneath the chamber. The shadows. Ethan stumbled backward, breathing heavily. Now he understood everything. The arena itself had become infected by centuries of cruelty. The pillar suddenly began glowing brighter. A calm voice echoed softly inside Ethan's mind. The trial remains unfinished. Ethan looked around quickly. Who said that? The worthy must choose. The blue light spread across the floor beneath his feet. The voice continued. Power through fear. Red energy appeared around the shadows. Or strength through honor. Blue energy pulsed from the pillar. The chamber shook violently. Far above, the audience noticed something changing. Their cheering slowly became uncertain. The red lights inside the arena flickered strangely. Lord Koresh stood from his throne immediately. What is happening? He demanded angrily. One of his guards looked terrified. My lord, the lower chamber is activating. Koresh's face darkened instantly. That is impossible. Back below, Ethan looked toward the champion. The giant warrior had fallen to one knee now, while dozens of shadows dragged themselves across his body. He was losing. The pillar's voice returned. Only one path can break the arena. Ethan clenched his fists tightly. What do I do? For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then ancient symbols across the walls suddenly lit up. A single glowing weapon slowly rose from the floor beside the pillar. A sword. Its silver blade shined with blue light. Unlike every other weapon in the arena, this one looked clean, untouched by blood. The voice spoke again. The blade of judgment. Ethan carefully picked it up. The moment his hand touched the weapon, the shadows screamed in pain. They feared it. The champion looked up in shock. That blade, he whispered. The shadows immediately rushed toward Ethan together. Hundreds of glowing red eyes filled the darkness. But Ethan did not run this time. He stepped forward. Calm, focused. One shadow creature lunged first. Ethan swung the blade instinctively. Blue light exploded across the chamber. The creature vanished instantly, gone forever. The other shadows stopped moving. For the first time, fear appeared in their glowing eyes. The champion slowly stood again. A small smile appeared on his tired face. You truly are different, he said quietly. The shadows attacked again. This time Ethan fought back. The glowing sword moved through the darkness like lightning. Every strike destroyed another creature permanently. Blue light filled the chamber. The audience above slowly became silent. This was no longer entertainment. This felt different, important. Even the arena itself trembled strangely now. The red lights began fading while the ancient blue symbols grew brighter. Koresh watched everything from above with growing panic. No, he whispered. One of the older alien nobles beside him suddenly looked terrified. He carries the judgment blade, the noble said shakily. Koresh turned sharply. You know this weapon? The old alien nodded slowly. It belonged to the first guardian. Fear spread across Koresh's face for the first time. Meanwhile, Ethan continued fighting through the shadows beside the champion. Back to back, not as enemies, but as allies. And slowly, the darkness began losing. The remaining shadow creatures gathered together near the center of the chamber. Their bodies merged into something larger, something monstrous. A giant creature of pure darkness slowly rose toward the ceiling. Its massive red eyes opened fully. The entire chamber shook violently. Even the champion stepped backward. No one has ever forced it to appear, he whispered. The giant shadow creature looked directly at Ethan. Then it spoke with a voice that sounded like thousands screaming together. The game must never end. The walls cracked. The arena above trembled. Panic spread through the crowd for the first time in centuries. And Ethan realized the real battle was only beginning. The giant shadow creature rose higher into the chamber. Its body looked like living darkness mixed with smoke and fire. Red lightning moved across its massive shape, while thousands of screaming voices echoed from inside it. The walls trembled, the floor cracked. Even the glowing blue symbols around the chamber flickered weakly beneath the creature's presence. Ethan tightened his grip on the judgment blade. The monster's burning red eyes stared directly at him. "You threaten the game," it growled. Its voice shook the entire underground arena. Beside Ethan, the giant champion slowly lifted his broken weapon again, though exhaustion covered his face. "That thing," the champion whispered, "is the heart of the corruption." Ethan looked at him quickly. "You've seen it before?" The warrior nodded once. "Long ago." The champion's golden eyes darkened with painful memories. When the arena changed, this creature appeared beneath it. Every death fed it. Every scream made it stronger. The shadow monster spread its massive arms. Black energy exploded outward like a storm. Both Ethan and the champion were thrown backward across the chamber. Ethan crashed hard against the floor, the glowing sword nearly leaving his hand. Far above them, chaos spread through the main arena. The audience was no longer cheering. They were afraid. The giant screens around the stadium showed the shadow creature rising below the arena floor. Many aliens stood from their seats nervously. "This isn't part of the show." "What is that thing?" "Stop the game." Lord Koresh slammed both fists against his throne. "Silence," he roared. But for the first time in years, nobody listened immediately. Fear had replaced excitement, and Koresh hated it. Down below, the shadow creature turned toward Ethan again. The human must die. Thousands of dark tendrils suddenly rushed toward him across the floor like giant snakes. Ethan rolled aside quickly as the black tendrils smashed through stone pillars behind him. The chamber began collapsing. Huge rocks fell from the ceiling. Dust filled the air. The champion charged forward with a roar and slammed his massive weapon into the creature's side. Blue sparks exploded everywhere. The shadow monster staggered slightly, but then its body reformed instantly. The creature backhanded the champion with terrifying force. The giant warrior flew across the chamber and smashed into a wall hard enough to crack the stone. "Champion," Ethan shouted. The warrior collapsed onto one knee, breathing heavily. The shadows were draining his strength. The creature slowly moved toward him. "You fought well once," it whispered cruelly. "Now kneel again." Dark chains suddenly appeared from the floor and wrapped around the champion's arms and chest. The giant warrior struggled violently, but the chains only tightened. Ethan's anger burned hotter. "No more chains," he said quietly. The shadow creature turned toward him slowly. "What?" Ethan stood up fully, raising the glowing judgment blade. "I said no more chains." Blue light exploded from the sword again. The chamber itself responded. Ancient symbols across the walls began shining brighter than ever before. The shadow creature pulled backward slightly. It was afraid. The pillar's calm voice suddenly echoed through the chamber again. "The trial nears its end." Ethan looked toward the glowing pillar. "How do I stop this thing?" The answer came immediately. Not through hate. The shadow creature roared furiously. "Lies!" It attacked Ethan directly this time. A giant claw of darkness slammed downward. Ethan barely blocked it with a glowing blade. The impact sent shockwaves through the room. Pain shot through his arms. The creature was unbelievably powerful. It attacked again. And again. Each strike pushed Ethan farther backward across the chamber. The monster fed on fear, fed on violence, fed on death, and the arena above had given it power for centuries. Then Ethan realized something important. The creature became stronger every time he fought it with anger. That was the secret. The arena survived because everyone answered cruelty with more cruelty. The cycle never ended. The shadow creature rushed toward him again. But this time, Ethan lowered the sword. The champion looked shocked. "What are you doing?" Even the monster hesitated. Ethan slowly looked up at the massive darkness before him. "You were created from fear," he said calmly. The creature growled. "We are power." "No," Ethan answered quietly. "Your pain." The red eyes narrowed. The entire chamber became silent. Ethan took another step forward. This place turned suffering into entertainment for too long. The creature roared louder. The game must continue. Why? Ethan shouted back. The question echoed across the chamber. Even the audience above heard it. The shadow creature froze. For the first time, it had no answer. Ethan pointed the glowing sword toward the crowd far above. They cheered for death because nobody showed them another way. The champion stared at Ethan silently now. The blue symbols across the chamber shined brighter with every word. Ethan continued walking toward the creature fearlessly. You feed on fear because fear is all this place remembers. The monster's body began shaking violently. Dark smoke escaped from its form. But honor still exists, Ethan said firmly. Mercy still exists. The judgment blade suddenly burst with pure blue light. The chains around the champion shattered instantly. The red lights across the arena above completely died out. Only blue light remained now. The audience looked around nervously. Something ancient was waking beneath them. The shadow creature screamed furiously. Stop. But Ethan stepped closer again. You don't control this place anymore. The creature attacked one final time. A giant wave of darkness rushed toward Ethan from every direction. The champion shouted in warning. But Ethan did not move. Instead, he drove the judgment blade directly into the ground. Blue energy exploded through the entire chamber like a star being born. The shadows screamed in agony. The giant monster began breaking apart. Cracks of blue light spread across its massive body. No, it whispered weakly. The chamber shook harder than ever before. Above them, the entire arena started collapsing. Panic spread through the crowd as pieces of the ceiling began falling. Lord Koresh stared at the giant screens in horror. This cannot happen, he whispered. But it already was. Deep below the arena, the shadow creature slowly looked at Ethan one final time. Then, for the first time in centuries, its voice sounded tired instead of cruel. End the game! And the monster shattered into pure light. Blue light filled the underground chamber. The shadow creature shattered into thousands of glowing pieces that floated through the air like burning stars. The terrible screaming voices disappeared one by one until only silence remained. For the first time in centuries, the arena was quiet. Ethan stood motionless beside the judgment blade, breathing heavily. His hands trembled from exhaustion, while dust slowly fell around him. The giant champion stared at the fading light in disbelief. It's over, he whispered. Then suddenly, boom! The entire chamber shook violently. Large cracks spread across the walls and ceiling. Ancient stone pillars collapsed while alarms echoed from somewhere above. The arena was falling apart. The champion quickly grabbed Ethan before a massive piece of rock crashed beside them. We need to move, he shouted. Ethan nodded immediately. Far above, complete panic had taken over Varkos Prime's great arena. Thousands of aliens rushed toward exits while guards screamed orders that nobody followed anymore. The giant hologram screens flickered wildly. Some showed the underground chamber collapsing. Others showed Ethan standing with a glowing blue sword. The audience looked terrified, not because of the human, because the truth was finally visible. The game of fate had never been honorable. It had been cruel, and now the entire galaxy had seen it. At the center of the arena, Lord Koresh stood frozen beside his throne. His golden armor shook slightly as explosions echoed beneath the floor. This cannot be happening, he whispered again. One of his commanders ran toward him nervously. My lord, the lower systems are collapsing. We must evacuate. Koresh grabbed the alien by the throat instantly. And oh, he roared, the games cannot end. Fear filled the commander's eyes. The people are leaving. Koresh looked around the arena in horror. The cheering crowd that once worshipped him was now running away. Everything he built was breaking apart, and one human caused it. Below the arena, Ethan and the champion moved through collapsing tunnels filled with smoke and falling debris. Blue symbols continued glowing across the ancient walls now. The sacred place was alive again, not corrupted, not controlled by fear. Freed, the champion pushed aside a fallen stone pillar, blocking their path. You saved this place, he said while breathing heavily. Ethan shook his head. No, I just reminded it what it used to be. The giant warrior looked at him quietly. After a moment, he smiled for the first time. A real smile, not the empty face of a prisoner. What is your name, human? Ethan Cole. The champion nodded slowly. I was once called General Tarek. Ethan looked surprised. You were a general? Tarek's expression darkened slightly. A very long time ago. Before Ethan could ask more, another explosion shook the tunnel. The ceiling above them cracked open, revealing red emergency lights from the arena overhead. Tarek pointed upward. That way. They climbed through the broken passage together. As they reached the surface level, chaos surrounded them. Aliens pushed and screamed while security forces tried desperately to control the crowds. Fires burned across several sections of the arena walls. But then something unexpected happened. The people noticed Ethan. One by one, aliens stopped running. They stared at the human, holding the glowing judgment blade. Whispers spread quickly. That's him. The human survived. He ended the game. Even the guards lowered their weapons uncertainly. Ethan looked around carefully. For the first time since arriving on Varkos Prime, nobody looked at him like prey. Then Lord Koresh appeared. The ruler of the games walked slowly through the smoke toward Ethan, surrounded by heavily armed guards. His glowing yellow eyes burned with rage. You! Koresh growled. The entire arena became silent again. Koresh pointed one claw directly at Ethan. You destroyed centuries of tradition. Ethan stepped forward calmly. No, he answered. I ended centuries of cruelty. The crowd watched closely. Koresh noticed something dangerous immediately. Nobody was cheering for him anymore. The ruler's anger became desperation. You think mercy makes you strong, he shouted. Ethan looked directly into his eyes. No, choosing mercy when cruelty is easier, that is strength. Those words echoed across the broken arena. Several guards slowly stepped away from Koresh. Others lowered their weapons completely. The ruler saw it happen, and panic finally entered his face. You dare betray me? Koresh roared at his own soldiers. But nobody moved. An older alien woman from the crowd suddenly stepped forward. Her voice shook slightly, but she spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. He's right. More silence followed. Then another voice joined. The games were never honorable. Another alien stepped forward. We were entertained by suffering. The whispers became louder. All around the arena, people began realizing the truth together. Koresh looked around in horror. His power had depended on fear, and fear was disappearing. The ruler suddenly pulled a hidden energy weapon from beneath his armor and aimed it directly at Ethan. If the game dies, Koresh snarled, then you die with it. Several aliens screamed in shock, but before Koresh could fire, Tarek moved. The giant former champion stepped between them instantly. The energy blast struck his armor with explosive force. Tarek collapsed heavily onto one knee. Tarek! Ethan shouted. Koresh tried firing again, but this time the guard stopped him. Multiple soldiers grabbed the ruler's arms and forced the weapon away. Release me! Koresh screamed wildly, but it was over. The crowd no longer feared him. The guards dragged the furious ruler away, while the people watched silently. The age of the games had ended. Ethan quickly knelt beside Tarek. The giant warrior's breathing had become weak. Blue light from the ancient chamber below glowed softly beneath the broken floor. Tarek looked at Ethan and smiled faintly. You gave them hope, he whispered. Ethan shook his head. We did. Tarek looked toward the sky above the broken arena. For the first time in centuries, sunlight touched his face. No chains, he said softly. Then his eyes slowly closed. Ethan lowered his head silently. Around them, the people of Varkos Prime stood quietly. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated. Because they understood something important now. True strength was not domination, not fear, not violence. True strength was choosing honor when the galaxy expected cruelty. Days later, news spread across countless star systems. The game of fate had fallen. The human who survived became a legend. Some called him reckless. Some called him dangerous. But across the galaxy, millions remembered one thing above all else. A single human had entered a deadly game meant for monsters and reminded the galaxy what honor looked like.